Hello everyone. Here in this session we'll be discussing about formation of soil. Before discussing about formation of soil, how the rocks are formed, and then we'll discuss from the rocks how the soils are formed. What you are seeing here on the screen is a rock cycle. Right here, if I try to explain from magma, the magma gets cooled and then it may form rock which are inside the earth, or they may come out of the earth surface and then they will be recognized as extrusive igneous rocks. The rocks which are formed by the magma below the ground level will be referred to as intrusive igneous rocks. The part which is getting exposed on the surface of the earth gets lifted up, and then because of so many reasons, it gets weathered, it gets eroded and transported and deposited. This is where we can say that there is formation of soil. And then after that formation of soil, the soil particles get settled down, it is called as sediment, and then it gets deep below the sea surface or ground surface, gets buried, compacted in cementation form, which is called as sedimentary rock. And then afterwards, uh, that also, if it gets lifted up to the surface, again it gets weathered and again it comes back. But by some means, if it gets into deep ground, and then it is subjected to deeper burial and then exposed to heat and pressure, then it forms what is known as metamorphic rock. And then metamorphic rock, when it gets reburied, again it may become once more metamorphic rock, but only when it gets into a magma form, again it comes as rock, or uh, igneous rock below the ground level, or igneous rock above the ground level. So, how the soil is formed? If we ask a question, the answer would be very simple. Weathering action and erosion produces soil from rocks. The parent rocks can be igneous or metamorphic or sedimentary rock. The soil formation is a cyclic process. Now, the weathering can be physical weathering or chemical weathering. After millions of years of a rock, weathering, a rock converts into a soil. The basic rock formed is because of the crystallization of the molten magma, and it is called igneous rock. The rocks undergo metamorphism under high temperature and pressure to form metamorphic rocks. Both igneous and metamorphic rocks are converted into sedimentary rocks, so due to transportation of to different locations by the agencies such as wind, water, etc. Physical or chemical weathering actually breaks down the rocks uh, down into smaller bits. Chemical weathering often results from interaction of water and temperature in an environment with the minerals in the rock. It can be oxidation or hydration. Okay, here it is a picture shows mechanical or physical weathering. The physical weathering is also known as mechanical weathering because physically a force is applied. The force is applied by some natural agencies. On the basis of geological origin, soils can be divided into physical weathering, two groups: soils formed by physical weathering or chemical weathering. Physical is also referred to as mechanical weathering. It actually breaks the rocks into smaller pieces. Maybe action of gravity, it becomes into very small pieces. Or here in the river, if there is a formation of potholes, then also there is a chance that it will be broken into smaller pieces. The soil formed because of smaller particles which are being seen or can be seen by the eyes will be known as gravels and sands. Weathering of rocks, the rocks fall from large heights under the action of gravity or impact air and water. Water also break down these rocks into smaller pieces. Some are relatively larger or some are smaller in size. These are referred to as gravel and sand respectively depending upon their size. What actually the size is referred to as gravel or what actual size is referred to as sand, we'll see it in details afterwards. These soils maintain the minerals present in the parent rock. Okay, here there are pictures which show chemical weathering. The soils formed by chemical weathering of rocks. See, rock decomposes by oxidation, carbonation, or hydration, and leaching by organic acids from finer particles of the soils known as uh, the soil formed is known as silt or clay. Silt particles are coarser than the clay particles. You can see in the picture there are a variety of chemical actions which have taken place. Chemical weathering often results from interaction of water and temperature in an environment with minerals in rocks. It can be oxidation or it can be hydration. Characteristics of soils formed by chemical weathering of rocks will be uh, whether it will be a smaller piece or bigger pieces. If it is a bigger piece particles, then it is referred to as silt, and then if it is a very small size particles, then it will be known as uh, clay. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, here, different types of soils are being seen. Depending upon transportation and deposition, they are named as residual soils or transported soils. If the soil formed is just at the place where the rock was existing, then it is called residual soils. Means there is a rock, and then because of disintegration of the rock, because of some or the other reasons, the soil is formed, and when the soil is getting deposited there itself without getting transported, then that kind of soil is known as a residual soil. There are a variety of ways how the soil gets transported and gets deposited somewhere else. Depending upon that, there are different names which are given, and as the list shows here, it is alluvial soils or lacustrine soils, marine soils, aeolian soils, and then glacial soils. Now, if weathered material or the soil formed remain at the place where they are formed, then they are called residual soils. If the soils formed is transported elsewhere due to some agencies like wind, water, ice, etc., then they are called transported soils. Now, as you see here, alluvial soils are formed because of transportation and deposition by running water of the river. They are called alluvial soils. Suppose uh, if it is deposited by suspension in still fresh water, then it is in the lakes, then it is called lacustrine soil. Then marine soils are deposited by suspension in seawater. The aeolian soils are the transported and deposited by wind. And last one, the glacial soils are transported and deposited by glaciers. Now in this picture, there are four pictures. The first one shows you a gravel, because the size of the particles are coarser only because it is transported. All the rough surface are smoothened out and then they have become very nice pebbles. So this particular part of the soil is referred to as gravel, and this is a sand. And clearly, just by looking at the size of the particles, so one can classify it whether it is a gravel or silt or clay. You will not be able to recognize through your eyes, so you have to do a kind of sedimentation. The particles quickly get settled or sand, and then afterwards what settles is silt, and then clay may settle, may not settle, and then lumps of clays can be seen here. So here, this is how the soil is formed because of weathering action of various reasons, and accordingly the names of the soils are given.